So here we are, the final case with Justice for All. Considering in my ranking video a while back I wasn't too fond of the case, has my opinion changed, or am I doubling down? Well, first let's talk about the plot leading into the case. Phoenix, Maya, and Pearl are at the Superhero Award events thanks to a +3 from Will Powers, and there are two main characters to take into account. That of the Nickel Samurai, who's played by Matt Ongard, and the German Ninja, who's played by Juan Carida. The two of them, rivals, are competing for the trophy in this cool little intro cutscene where it's shown Matt bested Juan again. In the post-award show, whilst waiting for a presumed press conference with the Nickel Samurai, a few things happen. The first is Maya is pulled away from the others, and the second is the press conference is cancelled due to unique circumstance, a la murder. Being in close proximity of the murder, Phoenix has a nice look at the scene before the case really starts. What do I mean by that? Well, it turns out Maya has been kidnapped and the bounty is one acquittal for Mr. Matthew Ongard. Naturally, with this amount of desperation, the stage is set to become the attorney for Ongard and get Maya back. The setup lets itself have some good moments, such as when the info is spread about Maya's disappearance or the connections between Phoenix, Edgeworth, Gumshoe, and the Faye family. But overall, I think the case fails to deliver a satisfying experience. The reason for that being, for all the joy I get from seeing the characters, the case-specific characters of Matt, Juan, and Adrian just don't hold much depth. Matt is a two-tone dick, Adrian is monotone and fairly boring, and Juan, whilst presented nicely, is shown to still hold his selfish intent above all. I don't think they needed to change all three characters, and I think they can kinda get away with Matt as a character because of how the case is set up, but I feel Adrian needed to be opened up more in order to be more angry at the two of them, or one needed to be painted as a good guy, just to make the case feel justified ethically. With Phoenix almost getting a false verdict, and Adrian still refuses to talk on the matter. To move on for a bit, the characters are fairly stock standard, with the usual Maya, Mia, Pearl, Phoenix, Gumshoe, and the judge. The prosecutors are Franziska, who does the initial day of the investigation before a certain event happens, which means she is unable to prosecute, and the edgelord himself, who valiantly takes the stand in Franziska's absence, where we see a look at the new Edgeworth, which is basically just Rise from the Ashes Edgeworth. Who knew retconning would cause issues? Despite this depiction of Edgeworth is the one we get going forward, and is like the only prosecutor in the game that holds the truth above the verdict, other than maybe Godot, but one, he's in a bit of a morally grey area, and two, we'll cover him when we get to Trials and Tribulations. As for the other characters, they treat it as a bit of a reunion, with including some of the most prominent characters to this point in the series, including but not limited to Wendy Oldbag, Will Powers, Lotta Hart, and Director Hottie. Certainly not my first choice, but whatever. Besides the side characters mentioned, the story mentions 4 main characters, 3 of which I've mentioned briefly: the popular but ferocious Matt Ongard, the tame and shy Ms. Andrews, and the deceased Juan Carida. However, the story mentions a 4th character by the name of Celeste Impacts. Miss Impacts doesn't get much screen time, but she is shown as crucially important to understand the current dynamic of these 3, Miss Andrews describing her as her loving and caring mentor to her current position as Matt's assistant. This becomes important when you find Miss Impacts committed suicide due to her relationships with Matt and Juan, causing Miss Andrews' resentment. This is a bit of a simplification, however, and I do recommend playing the case to fully understand the lore. Trust me, is even not my favorite case, it's worth a playthrough. Moving from the characters, I can say I think the environment of the case, being that of the Gatewater Hotel, is amazing. Whilst most cases tend to have a bunch of connecting scenery, the places you jump through can feel a little bit disconnected. For a good example of this, take Turnabout Goodbyes. During that case, a bulk of the investigation occurs at God Lake, and whilst a fairly modest entrance through to a small sitting area with food stalls and a lake can be expected, going from that to the abandoned side area where Lotta is staying, or the uneventful boat shack area, just doesn't gel as well as the cheery main area. Another issue can be found in Rise from the Ashes, where there is so many different scenes, it's easy to get lost and forget how to find your way into certain spaces. Speaking from experience, I'm pretty sure I forgot how to find the precinct on more than one occasion in that case. Thankfully, this case keeps it mostly simple, with there being 4 main locations you visit: the hotel, the detention center, On Guard's escape, and the medical clinic, with them not being very long segments besides the hotel, where it's expected you'll spend most of the time investigating. The hotel then has a lot more to explore than everywhere else, with there being the main hall, the dining hall, the hallway, and both On Guard and Kurita's personal rooms. They make the place feel lively, packing areas full of characters and things to explore, which can be annoying when you're looking for that one small thing to progress, but when you're gathering evidence and preparing your case, it can be a fun adventure. The courtroom scenes are the same as always in this case, with a few added twists like choosing how your client pleads, and a nice cameo with bonus evidence from Franziska. I think the reason why the courtroom is so good in Ace Attorney games, but is also really hard to rate, is because of the puzzles are really fun, but at the end of the day it's just the same gameplay loop. Which I know I've said about 3 times in this series right now, so I'll stop after this, but I'll equate it to each case is like a generated world or seed in a game like Enter the Gungeon, Spelunky, or Minecraft, that type of thing, where the goal of the game is known every time, but what you need to get there changes. Unfortunately, Ace Attorney isn't procedurally generated, so there aren't infinite cases with infinite possibilities, but I hope you can understand what I'm saying. That each case's courtroom is like a different seed where they're all very similar but also different, making it hard to really rank them. So far, I think I've been relatively positive on the case, but for as much as I can praise the ideas and concepts, I wasn't that big a fan of how they executed. Other than the characters which I covered, I think the case didn't involve the main cast enough. Sure, everyone was there, but think back to Turnabout Goodbyes. Edgeworth, the suspected killer, and his mentor, the ruthless prosecutor. His childhood friend reuniting to save him. Like, this case just doesn't have the same aura. They kinda tried it with Maya being kidnapped, but it doesn't pull off the same effect. And to be fair, I wouldn't want them to see the same case rehashed for the finale of the game, but I would've liked to see some connection to the main cast of the series in the incident, even if it were just some one-off girlfriend of Larry's or something. Speaking on Turnabout Goodbyes, Edgeworth shouldn't have prosecuted this case. Whilst I like Edgeworth as both a character and a prosecutor, and I especially love how Edgeworth and Riot are used to work together, I can't help but feel like Shelly DeKiller isn't a big enough threat by himself, and that I think a larger threat from the prosecution or from DeKiller himself might have had the payoff working a bit better. I say this because Manfred von Karma, Godot, and a few prosecutors from later fight to the bitter end. They look to alter lives and ruin careers. Which, whilst DeKiller does have Maya, it feels weird that the bad guy is also helping you get an acquittal. Like, most bad forces act against you in the games, so having one act for you just doesn't have the same satisfying ending that the first or third games have. With that said, I'm not some game design genius who necessarily knows how to make the cases better, I'm just floating some ideas around. And to be fair, I think the game devs didn't enjoy how this turned out, seeing as they never turned to the idea of a client of Phoenix's or another player character being guilty, at least from everything I've played before. Final thoughts. In my opinion, this is the weakest final case in the series. Again, from what I've played, so no great Ace Attorney. I think even the tamer ones, in my opinion, being Apollo Justice and Dual Destinies, managed to be a step above this case. Farewell My Turnabout does bring some fun ideas to the table, such as having the client be guilty, but the problem then comes that there's no villain for the climax of the game. And being completely honest, it isn't the worst case to be made. Though, with that said, I gave Farewell My Turnabout a solid 2 out of 5 attorney badges. Okay, I'm finally back. Sorry for the wait on this one, I got caught up with some stuff and we'll hopefully back to being on a normal schedule going forward. Let me know your thoughts on the case below, feel free to check out my socials, and as always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!